What is going on, Chatbot Builders? Can you hear me now? I hope so. Golly, that sure was embarrassing. Take two. And now my favorite YouTuber hates me. How are y'all doing tonight? Man, okay, audio is good. What up? D Money in the house, Mark. Thanks for letting me know. I appreciate the comments, by the way. Even though maybe you don't want to tell me up sounding like a crazy robot. Doug, thank you, man. I should have been in radio. Got the face for radio. I don't have the voice for radio. I know that. Oh, much better. All right, cool, man. Man, this. You know what? I should start off all the episodes, all the shows off bad. That way, I get all this encouragement up front. I'm just kidding. CBB Nation, I love you guys, all y'all around the world. Thank you so much for hanging in there. This will be a good one, I promise you. Whenever I do screw up badly, I try to make up for it. So that's what I'm going to try to do tonight. And I love you guys for real, man. I'm sorry, dude. Sorry, Charles is over here embarrassed, probably telling all his investor friends, man, look at this guy. He's great. Teaches us all the things. And here I am sounding like a bad machine. But I'll make sure it's worth your time, I promise you. We're going to see a professional YouTuber here in a second. Just a couple clips. I need to make sure I throw his QR code on here. I had that in that OBS software that was making me sound bad. Blame the software, right? He's a professional YouTube, Matt, and he's talking about what everyone is going to be continuing to talk about through 2025, and that is AI agents. I was looking at Twitter earlier today, and I was looking at all these people talking about, all things AI is what I do. And they say, okay, well, I thought 2024 was the year of agents. And this was a person I don't know, but obviously this is a person that was ahead of the game, maybe. Someone like would be in CBB Nation. We've known about agents. We've been making them a very long time, regardless of the terminology. So the point of this, number one, if you don't know Matt, you should follow him on YouTube and stay up to date. But number two, it's especially to those that have been with us for, say, over a year, even for a few months, but especially those that have been over a year, you're so far ahead of the game because you've been doing exactly what he is explaining, what Anthropic has just written about for over a year. You're very far ahead. I'm telling you, and I'm going to prove it. Like, this is just followed him. That's awesome. That's why I'm doing this. Like, not that he needs my help to get any viewers, but he'll get high quality people. Subscribing if you guys do choose to do so. I'm going to jump right into it, and I think we're going to have some fun here.
To tell you how to build effective agents. Anthropic, the company behind the Claude family of models, just dropped a bunch of information about how to build effective models, and I read through it, and it's actually really good. So this is the blog post just about a week ago. It came out, Building Effective Agents. They go over what is an agent, and a lot of people have different definitions of what an agent is. I personally think an agent is essentially the core LLM, the intelligence, wrapped with memory, tools, and the ability to collaborate with other agents.
Okay, so I'm going to stop right there. He gave probably the best, most straightforward definition of what an agent actually is that I've heard any other YouTuber say, aside from maybe Dave Shapiro, who, he doesn't really make too many AI videos anymore because he thinks that there's enough knowledge to go around. I tell you right now, he is wrong. Dave Shapiro, you're wrong. We need you to come back. Come back with your knowledge. We owe a lot to CBB to what he has his free knowledge he's dropped on YouTube and Patreon and all that stuff. But I'm going to stop here because I'm going to show it on my screen now. Let's see. So cool. What he is saying, guys, is so true. I'm going to throw him back on here. Oops, let's see.
LLMs and tools.
So he's talking about what makes up an agent. And so I'll show you so you guys understand that you're already there. When we go to our integrations page, and in this case, we have all four of the big LLMs, but you're already connected to OpenAI. When you just look here, what used to be known for the real OGs, AutoGPT, now the default agent, this is exactly what he's describing. And it goes deeper in the flow builder because you get more control of the memory. But he's talking about you got your instructions, your tools, your functions, your models. He didn't mention temperature, I don't think, but temperature and tokens, these are all of the parameters that make up an agent. Okay, and so let's continue to watch into the video. I'm going to keep showing you references so that it sticks in your mind what you are doing, so that even though we are chatbot builder AI, you guys are beyond chatbots. You guys are building AI systems and agents and assistants. The AI systems is where you're going to make the most money. What sounds more expensive, or what sounds more valuable, a chatbot or an AI system for your business? Okay, it's a different ball game, but that's what you guys are doing, and that's what I want to prove.
Are orchestrated through predefined code.
So let's make sure
different definitions of what an agent is. I personally think an agent is essentially the core LLM, the intelligence wrapped with memory, tools, and the ability to collaborate with other agents. Workflows are systems where LLMs and tools are orchestrated through predefined code paths.
Okay, so this is number 2. I want to go ahead and show you this. He's saying workflows, predefined paths, and code. Those were the basic words. That's what an LLM would, those are the tokens that LLM would read. I'm like an LLM by now. This, my friends, is a workflow. This is a flow. Okay, so this flow is, in this case, it's dynamic. It's a hybrid, more or less. This is an AI generated, an LLM action. In this case, a generate text action. And this is a static text block. This is a workflow. So the difference here is what used to be auto GPT, now your default agent. This has no flow that is directly connected outside of a function or tools. But any of the flows that you have can be connected to that default agent. Okay, let's continue the video here. He's going to continue to talk about workflows and then the difference between a workflow and an agent.
Agents, on the other hand, are systems where LLMs dynamically direct their own processes and tool usage, maintaining control over how they accomplish tasks. Now, the best agentic framework blur the lines between workflows and agents. There are certain parts of agentic systems where you want more structure and you want to use predefined code to help these agents along.
Predefined code, you're working with code whether you know it or not. When you're dealing with no code or low code tools, CBB is no code. You don't need any code to succeed. We're taking care of the code writing process for you. So when you're working in Flow Builder, or when you're prompting your agent or your assistant, and especially when you're including functions, understand all of that work you're putting in, that's piles of code, okay?
And then there are other parts where you just want them to think and create and to work with other agents to come up with the best solution. And I really think, as I said, the best agentic frameworks really blur this line or make it easy to use both in a single use case. Next,
blur the lines. So, I love the way he said that. When you say blur the lines, it's like the same thing as not being clear. And while I don't ever want us to be seen as a software that's not clear, I can promise you one of the most unclear things, and this is our fault, my fault personally, for not educating better, you guys, the difference between a workflow where you've defined some things, predefined code, predefined steps, big or small, versus your autonomous agent, your default agent. Okay, so this has been the most tricky thing to understand. Which one do you need? The end result of this video is going to explain, start off simple, less is more, and only build on to more things when you need to, which is exactly kind of what we preach. And so the first thing that I generally tell people is start off with auto GPT. I know it's tattooed in my brain, but start off with the default agent, because here, when you just tell the AI what to do, in general, it's gonna listen. And if you've got files and you need to upload your data, cool. Just choose the assistant. You'll make your assistant down here in pretty much the same kind of way, but keep it simple. Then when you need to have more things, say like our bot, our customer service bot, we've got quick replies, right? Let's show you that. When I click here and I'm like, hey, it should say, okay, what's your question? And it's going to give me quick replies here. This you can't have necessarily with auto GPT or your default agent, if that makes sense. So as you add complexity, that is where workflows come into play. So let's get back to the video where he's going to talk a little bit more
over when to use and when not to use agents. And this first sentence, I could not agree more with. When building applications with LLMs, we recommend finding the simplest solution possible and only increasing complexity when needed. So important that not only applies to agents, that not only applies to code, that is a life lesson when building any system. Start with the simplest implementation possible and only add complexity when necessary. Agentic systems often
that's such a good point. I want you to understand too, just because a lot of you guys have mastered the swarm concept now, one of the things that he hits on, and the reason, obviously, I'm not going to include this whole video because I want you guys to go watch it and stuff. He makes it clear the more, just because you can doesn't mean you should. He all but says that. And so just because you can split up what could be a one-shot prompt agent or assistant with one agent, just because you can split it up into 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 20 doesn't mean you have to or should. And overcomplicating things can become easy. And so he hits on this quite a bit during his video. Don't overcomplicate things, and only add things that you need to add, and it's going to be better.
trade latency and cost for
I'm going to
better
back it up just a little bit so we don't miss anything. 151. We'll put it here.
when necessary. Agentic systems often trade latency and cost for better task performance, and you should consider when this trade-off makes sense. So the more sophisticated and more complex your agent usage is, it's going to use more tokens and it's going to take more time. Now, solving that latency and cost is also something that you can work on with your agentic system. So they double down, they say workflows offer predictability and consistency for well-defined tasks, whereas agents are the better option when flexibility and model-driven decision making are needed at scale. So we're going to go over some examples of what an agentic system looks like, starting from something pretty simple. Anthropic specifically talks about when a problem is this simple, their core models, their base models, have all the necessary functionality to solve it without needing any kind of additional framework. So here's what we're seeing here. You have in, so that's the prompt. Then you have the LLM. The LLM, through the Claude family of models, has the ability to get search results, so retrieval, has the ability to use tools, and has memory. And then you have the output. So after it decides what it needs to use, then it gives you the output. Let's
go back and look at that a little bit deeper so you guys can understand, like, we're doing the same thing, and I'll show you how workflows evolve as the complexity need rises. So we'll just call this test because I'm not creative at the moment. But as you can see here, we're going to start very similarly to how his chart is. And so he's got the in first, right? And we're going to talk about how he's so correct in pointing out some of actually Anthropic's jargon or verbiage that they use. And I'll point that out when we get there. But this is going to represent a last input. This is the last message from the user. The user is initiating the conversation in this instance. And so this is the in. Okay, so you have in, and then you have the LLM. Well, here's our I'm not showing you the screen, sorry. Here, this is the workflow I was mentioning. So you start off with one block, and we've got one OpenAI action here. The action here, we've got the model, we've got the instructions, and the last user input right here, the last message. This is the last message from the user. It could be the first message that initiates the conversation. So whatever the user just said is the last input. Whatever your custom instructions are for your agent here that you've made on the fly, or one that you would choose from here, your assistant, or if you have an agent made, it would show up in the dropdown. This is an agent that we've got right here with custom instructions. This is the makeup of that. And then we're just saving the information into a custom field. We could use the default here. And then we're taking the saved custom field and we're displaying it, we're printing it, showing it to the user. And so we'll just show it right here, which is called, what is it, AI default. And so this is the most basic of basic workflows possible. You're taking an input, generating an answer with OpenAI, and then displaying it to the user. This is essentially the same thing a text-to-text interaction with auto GPT or the default agent. All right, let's continue here.
Tools and has memory. And then you have
Okay, so and has memory. That's what I wanted to hit on. So tools and memory. Just so you guys understand, you're doing all this advanced stuff he's talking about, tools, memory. You're doing all of these same things. You're advanced too. You see this on my screen? You're advanced too. Okay, so click on that thing and look. The only difference here is we have the ability to remember the conversation or not. That's what he's talking about, memory. We have a more advanced memory system than most people can comprehend because of our custom field system, because of the account fields, and because of the custom user fields. We are far more ahead and can do things far faster than your mama's best friend's coder, who's the hero of the hero's coder. Okay, I promise you, I watch these things all day. You guys that don't know any code can outdo so many people that it would make their head spin. Anyways, so the tools, by the way, you're already equipped with one tool, which is a human handoff, which is a touted thing. It's going to be a standard that many platforms don't have. Therefore, many competitors of yours will not have this ability. It'll become more common as time goes on, but this is something that you have built in. But Google Sheets, that flow that you have in your bot, that is a tool. That is a function call that is calling a tool. Let's get back into the video here.
So after it decides what it needs to use, then it gives you the output. Let's look at a workflow now. And this is a workflow for prompt chaining. Prompt chaining decomposes a task into a sequence of steps where each LLM call processes the output of the previous one. You can add programmatic checks on any intermediate steps to ensure that.
Programmatic checks. What is that? Prompt chain. Yeah. Do you see why I've been wearing the prompt chain since way back? Before I had the black and red lumberjack with the hat to match. Do you see why? Because now it's December 30th, 2024, and you've got the biggest YouTubers explaining prompt chaining and chain of thought. And we've been here. We've been on this. This is the whole gimmick here. This is the whole funny thing. And this is exactly why the timestamp. So he's talking about prompt chains. So what's happening here, I'll show you something interesting. What's happening is we're immediately providing an answer from the AI to the human. But with the prompt chain, what you do is you get a little fancy. You fancy, huh? Right? We're going to take another action. And this is what he was just mentioning before I interrupted again. The more complex you make your workflow, the more latency that it will be added. So every time you're calling OpenAI or a Grok or a Claude or whatever, in this case, what I'm going to do is be extra fancy. While you weren't looking, I went ahead and connected Gemini, Claude, and Grok. And so what we could do here is we could say, let's call, since he's talking about Claude, our homies over there, we'll use Claude. And so it's going to happen. I'll rename this Claude rephrase. Claude rephrase. So Claudie boy here, I'm going to use advanced. I'm not going to use the conversation history here. I'm going to keep that to off. And I'm going to use the latest sonnet here, 3.5. Your helpful assistant. Rephrase the message that you are given to sound more eloquent and helpful and to the point. Right? Whatever custom instructions I have. And instead of it being last input, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say AI default reply. So it'll be the generation from OpenAI that would get sent to the user. Instead, I'm going to take that, use Claude, remix it, right? Rephrase it, and I'm going to say Claude version. Claude version. And we don't need to have a function on. No tools are needed here because all I'm doing is transforming the text. AI default reply is being transformed from Claude using Sonnet in this case. I could use any of their models, and then I'm saving it here in this response. Continue. And then I'll hook up to this text field. You're not, shoot, I keep doing that. Sorry about that. This is such a different thing here. What I did is I went through and I took the first AI block, which is just saying you're a helpful assistant. I'll say respond to the user in a helpful way. I'll take this and it's going to be saved in AI default reply. So the user is going to say something, and these are the instructions, and this is the model for this agent that's going to reply, and that reply is going to be saved here in AI default reply. Understood? This is where your message is being saved that you just generated from OpenAI. Generally, we would not have this Claude step here that I just added off the screen like a big old dummy since I'm not a YouTuber. This is what we started with. But what we want to do is we want to make it maybe better. So if we add another LLM here, in this case, I've chosen Claude rephrase. Claude here, our AI action is going to take not the last input from the user because we already got that. Instead, we're taking the message we just generated from OpenAI, AI default reply, and we're using these instructions. You're a helpful assistant. Rephrase the message that you were given to sound more eloquent and helpful and to the point. Okay. And then we made a custom field here. When I click save, publish, and refresh, it'll be available to see. We named it Claude version. Okay. So instead of it being AI default reply, which I could still show, you know, what I could do, something like this. I could show it here, and then I could show it here, like both versions. I guess I could do it this way. So here, this will be the first reply that'll be sent. And then here I could go to Claude, and I'm going to display the message here. And I want to make sure that I didn't know which one is which. So I'll say Claude, and here's Claude response or Claude version. Right. And then I can do the same thing here with old OpenAI. Right. So this thing is called test here I just made. We've got OpenAI. It's going to take the message that is the last input. This is what the user said. Here's our basic instructions. Just respond in a helpful way. As soon as that is successful, that'll be printed and shown to the user. But really, we're after the Claude rephrase. We're saying Claude might make this better. And we're after the best response, maybe. We like the way Claude is going to run the response. And we think that instead of it just responding directly to the user, based on what OpenAI says, we're just going to make it better with Claude, for example. And maybe this is going to be an assistant, right? So if you're using a huge document and you're using an assistant that's giving an answer, you prompt chain it with Claude. So instead of it having that assistant response from OpenAI, you've got Claude's version. So like, let's publish this and let's see what it looks like. So if I go to my settings here, what we'll need to do, and this is exactly what Claude's documentation was saying, make it easy and then give a reason to do something of the other. I'm going to turn off the default agent the easy way. They're both easy, but I'm going to go to the default flow and turn on this guy here, this default workflow, and hit save. So now when I go to my welcome message and preview it, just like this, preview, it's just going to say, hello, what's up? I'm going to say, hey, do you have time for some questions? And let's just see what happens. Do you have time for some questions? Sure. What do you need help with? Let's see. Did I make sure I save the right deal there? I do need to make sure that did save. OpenAI, that's good. Okay, so I've got to make sure I turn it off here. Turn off there. These are all your backups, by the way. When you have these default agents engaged with your LLMs, I just turned these on when you guys weren't looking. These are your backups in case anything failed. We already have prioritized for you. Even if you're using a default agent here, you're going to have a backup automatically. You can still set that up in your flow builder, but this is automatic for you. So test is still good. So we can go back to welcome, and it will we'll get a response from both of our LLMs if things go our way. So we'll go back to preview here. Hey there. Are you okay with some questions? We should get our response here. So look at the difference in the replies, right? OpenAI, of course, I'm here to help. What questions do you have? And here's old Claudia boy. I'd be delighted to assist you, right? Please feel free to share your questions. It's a good answer, you know? So let's look at that. The real way that this would look is when you come here, you don't actually need to print this message. We're just using a prompt chain here, hence the chain, prompt chain. So we could see, okay, we're first going to generate the message with OpenAI, and then we're going to rephrase it with Claude, and then we're going to print it. Let's continue with what he's saying here.
Process is still on track. So why would you need this? It sounds cool, but why would you need it? Well, the best way to explain it is when you have a situation in which it's complex and can be broken down into really modular pieces. So if you try to get a model to just accomplish this multi-step task all in one go, you're basically not going to get as high of quality. And so the trade-off here is to do each step independently, feed it to the next prompt, and then allow it to build off of that. And so as it says here, you're trading latency for quality. Another workflow example is routing. Routing is incredibly powerful.
If you've ever heard about routing in CBB Nation, go ahead and type that in the comment, because we got to let them know. We got to let them know about Ralph the Router. He's our homie. He's going to mention some really good routing concepts, and the routing concept is powerful, and it's beyond what meets the eye. You can think of some very interesting use cases for that, but let's see what he's going to say first, because I already forgot kind of what he was showing. I think he shows a couple of examples to us.
Can have very specialized agents waiting to accomplish their task, and they can be very different in what they're able to accomplish. And the cool thing is you can send a prompt and have a router decide which agent is most appropriate for whatever the task is. So what kind of tools does it require? What kind of expertise does it require? What kind of model does it require? Of course, because you can have different models for different agents. As it says here, routing works well for complex tasks where there are distinct categories that are better handled separately, and where classification can be handled accurately, either by an LLM or a more traditional classification model algorithm. Now, one example of routing that they give here, I think, is absolutely brilliant, and so much so I invested in a company that does exactly this. So here they say routing easy common questions to smaller models like Claude 3.5 Haiku, and hard unusual questions to more capable models like Claude 3.5 Sonnet to optimize cost and speed.
All right, so do y'all understand what he just said here? Do y'all understand what he just said here is so important? Whenever I heard this, I was like, man, they're going to love to hear this. I swear, if I lived in another place, another part of the world in the United States, where the real tech bros are, I'd already be contaminated, man. But I need you guys to understand how gangster you really are. He just said he invested in a company that the whole job essentially is to route the conversation correctly in order to save money, or to just provide the best user experience. Put it that way, okay? So check this out. I'm going to show you how to do exactly that. This dude, he's one of the smartest guys, right? He's a leader here, and one of my favorite dudes. He invested in a company that you could all create, and he says it in the video. You could do this. You could do this. You could do this. And I love that he's so encouraging to the people that watch his videos. Like, you could make this. You could do this. I love that. But I'm going to show you like how to do it. Okay. So we're in the flow builder here. The first thing that we're going to do is, in this case, use a router. And so let's say what we want is, we've got Claude here. We've got old where Googly Moogly at? Googly. Y'all got to get me off of this thing. There's old him and I. Let's fix him up real quick. Let's use advanced. Let's use that new flash. Keep all that the way it is for now. Turn the conversation history to off. We don't need a function right now. We do need to save something. Let's save this as Google reply, Gemini reply. Gemini reply, son. All right, cool. So we've got to rename him Googly. Google. We got Claude Google. We could have OpenAI up in here, and we could have Grok too. I'm going to show this just because I've never seen anyone ever do this before, so that's kind of fun. Let's repeat this guy, right? And this will be Grok. Grok rocks. Save and swap them out. Right, there's a little X right now. Advanced here, and let's use, what's their newest one? I think it's this one. We don't need vision. And let's turn off the history. Say, I'm gonna save a custom field here. So let's say Grok reply. All right, cool. So we've got Grok. Let's rename this guy to to OpenAI, because we've got mad OCD. OpenAI reply. All right, cool. So you got all 4 of your LLMs, and say each one of these you wanted to have do a specific job because they're better at one thing than the other for whatever reason, right? The first thing that would need to happen is this Ralph, the router has one job, and the job is going to be determine which model should go where, essentially, right? So because we're going to think smarter and not harder, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say chatgpt.com, and I'm going to be like, I should log in. Let's see what I've not logged in. Let's say we have a router that we are using in our workflow that will determine where the conversation should be routed to between the following LLMs: OpenAI, Gemini, Grok, and Claude. Grok, Claude. Determine in which scenario we should have the selected LLM answer the question for whatever reason. Make these like 2 or 3 lines long worth of instructions, and then provide user and assistant examples underneath it where the assistant only replies with one of the following LLM names I've described. We need at least 10 examples. That's prompt engineering, son. So cool. What's happening now is it's giving us exactly what I asked for: deep knowledge of current events. Choose Grok when the conversation involves business strategy. It's just making up the reasons in this case, but it's funny just to see what it thinks of, right? So what I'm going to say is I'll say, make the examples like this: user message here. And then I'm going to be like, assistant message here. Let's see if it'll give me what I want. Yep, that's exactly what I want. Right, so that should be all I need. We'll say, that was great. Give us the instructions again in a short paragraph, and then the user and assistant pairs. And this should be what we want. Cool. See what's happening here is we just want that one response. So we're going to take all of this, and this is our instructions for right now for our first little router here, right? And this is all we need to do. I think that should be pretty much what we want. And so what we have next is a condition. This is what he was just mentioning, to have checkpoints, basically. This is a checkpoint. So in this case, we've got a condition, and we're going to check which one was decided upon. And so what we'll do here is, let's see, what do we save this as? We need to come up with a good name, a good custom field here. AI default reply. Let's say selected LLM. Okay, and so continue. And then here is where we'll find that custom field we just made. Custom field, selected LLM. And we'll say is fine, but I like to do contains just in case. I'll say open AI. Save. Make another one. The same kind of deal is going to be contains Claude. You got another one here. Again, it'll be all the way at the bottom. This one will be contains Grok. And this will be contains last one. It'll be a Gemini. Are y'all following me on here? And I'll shut up here in a second. I just want to make sure we're like staying Gemini on track. Yeah. So we've got this router. He's going to determine based on the instructions that old ChatGPT gave us here, based on whatever the user said, what's going to happen is boom. We've got routing instructions, and the assistant knows it's going to output one of these names. It's going to be saved in selected LLM. Then we've got our stopping point. We have to see what this guy says, what he calls it, the checkpoint or whatever. This is the condition block. So if it's OpenAI, I know that it's going to go here. If it's going to be Claude, I've got him up top. Grok is going to be over here. Gemini is right here. Okay. And then if there's not a match, which there should never be, if there's a case where there's ever not a match, that means we've not given a strong enough prompt here. We've not given a good enough instructions, or we've not given good enough of something. But what I'll do here is I'll have text, and because we're testing, I'll say fail, right? And it'll be whatever it did output, we'll at least see what it said easily. Okay, so this is, let's look and see how it should look here. This is looking kind of crazy, but it's really not. We've got our router. This is the company he invested in. This guy's job is to determine, based on whatever that message was, where to route things. And it can get deep, as he explains, because if you've got, say, millions of messages in a day or a week or something, well, then it's going to matter big time when you use what model. In this case, we're flexing to use different LLMs altogether. But say you had the in OpenAI, we're using here, what is it, GPT-4o mini. Maybe in the case you're dealing with a high-end customer that your system sees, okay, they spend 100 grand with you. Maybe you need to go ahead and drop mini and let 04 or 40 serve them, if that makes sense. Let's see what he's going to continue to give more examples. Let's throw him back.
You want to give the right prompt to the right model at the right time. Routing is a good way to do that. And the company that I'm referring to is not Diamond. So they basically take your prompt, decide which of dozens of different models is most appropriate based on cost, latency, and quality. And then they will tell you which one to use. So big cost savings, big latency improvement, and just overall quality improvement as well. But then they also have voting, running the same task multiple times to get diverse outputs. Essentially, chain of thought reasoning. This is a very basic explanation for how the thinking models work.
This is so big. I'm so glad he told this, because, guys, I've said the same thing, and I've said, y'all, we could make our own kind of thinking model, and it's true. In the case here, I'm going to go back, and I'm actually going to switch it correctly. And yes, you already know I got that grid. Once you go grid, you don't go back. You already know that. You're awesome, Mark the man, king of Discord. This is futuristic. What's good, man? You see all the things, baby. I'm gonna win you over here so much. You're gonna just have to, all those Facebook groups you're running, man. You're gonna have to tell them there's only one CBB. So what's happening here? Yes, that's all I can say too. Is wow. right? So what he's explaining is voting, right? So in this case, what would be happening here? So gangster, instead of it just coming down, so what it's like basically the other half of this. So first, what's happened is the voting is basically taking place up front, right? This is what's happening. The voting is taking place up front. If you do what's called stacking, okay, this is how this would look. This would be stacking. We don't need a condition in this case, but we would have multiple LLMs at work. So you'd have I'm showing you things that just this is like the research stuff. We're gonna see more flow builders, man, which I'm certain of that. They're gonna have a hard time to keep up with us. I can also tell you that. So in this case, we don't need a router. We're gonna say vote, basically. Vote which one. So it'll be something like this could be your starting step. Your OpenAI is going to generate a reply. Then you've got Claude generating a reply. Then you've got Google generating a reply in this case. So we've got all four of our homies here generating replies, right? And then finally, we'll have to vote which one worked. Which one do we like best? Okay, so let's go like here. This one is going to be the vote. So this would be something like choose. This would be like choose which answer sounds the best based on our brand standards, which are, and for example, if you had a custom field called brand standards, this would be a great account field to have. This could be a part of your prompt. You could drop that in here, brand standards, and this would take into account, because I don't want to type fake brand standards right this second. You can just imagine this is brand standard stuff here. Choose which answer sounds the best based on our brand standards, which are, right? So then for the user message, what you would have is all of your replies, your Claude version. You'd have your OpenAI version. OpenAI. This would be, I guess, a default reply. That would be OpenAI. Did we do one for Gemini? Yeah, Gemini reply. And then you'd have to have one for old Grokky boy. Right, and you'd need to say Claude. You'd need to say OpenAI, because the custom field name wouldn't be taken into account, just the values, what the AI sees or what the computer sees, put it that way. Gemini. And then Grok. And so here you would want to have some good training examples up top of like how to respond. You would then be able to just say, okay, now I've got a condition coming back because it's giving me all the responses that I want based on whatever the user said. I got something from OpenAI, then I got something from Claude, Grok, and Google. And then here, my vote block, this could be the one where you're using the cheat models for all of these LLMs. But then when it comes down to the voting time, you're going to like say, okay, which one is the best? Then you're going to maybe use GPT 4.0, or maybe you're going to use Sonnet 3.5, because it's really got to make a good reasoning decision. And then we could say, you know what, if it's going to, it'll get selected. It'll choose one of the four names of the LLMs like we did a minute ago, or it'll say not good enough. And if it says not good enough, then the condition, maybe that's not going to match, you know. And maybe you want to be the one. This is where human in the loop comes in. Maybe you want to be the one that determines, is it good enough or not? You'd be able to loop back. But anyways, let's continue to see what he's got to say here. So good. He did such a good job on this.
A bunch of different variations, and then you figure out which one is best, and then you continue from there. So again, you can create this yourself. These are all very simple patterns in theory. Of course, they get more complex as you actually build them and productize them. But in theory, They're pretty simple. Another workflow, evaluator optimizer. Next, Anthropic goes on to just describe more about agents, and I want to pull out a couple key sentences and ideas from this. Agents begin their work with either a command from or interactive discussion with the human user. Now, that might not always be the case. I guess technically an agent will always have to start with a user, because even if you set it to be completely autonomous, you're still setting it to do so.
He's so right, man. So like, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I know from personal experience, not all YouTubers out there know what they are talking about. They're reading and regurgitating. For him to catch this is so money. And it's because he is a developer. He's developing all sorts of fun things too. But the thing that you got to understand is it's important, especially when you're new. Okay. When you're new, it might not make a lot of sense what he just said, but let me explain it visually for anyone that really wants to understand. He's saying, look, in this case, we've been saying the user is going to say something. That is the last input, right? So in this OpenAI block, what this is going to say is the last input. What he's talking about here is this user message field. If you've ever had the error that the message had no value, the message was 0 or null, you got an error log message because the message wasn't sent. The reason for that is because there is nothing here. The user message is required. The user message is required. And so the custom instructions, that's optional. It's true. You should have custom instructions, but the user message, there must be something there. And so the best example of this is a welcome message. If you have a welcome message that doesn't have actual real solid text here in the user message spot to initiate the thing, then the API call will fail. So the user message in general, you don't have to mess with it. Last input is what you want because it's what the user is saying to you. But in the case where you're running a function or an action, function is not a good word. In case you're running an action, like the Facebook, Twitter posting bot we just made, the agent that posts on Facebook for us, and the autonomous agent that posts on Twitter for us. In that case, there's no user messaging that agent. We have to put the instructions in the user message portion there to write the tweet and get it ready for approval or whatever. But I just wanted to point out the guy knows what he's talking about. When he said that, I caught the nuance, and a lot of people would miss that. CBB doesn't miss that, but I want to explain the user message is indeed important. Even myself, I got really tripped over on this before we had the UI built in.
But still, the way that they're describing it is you're either saying, okay, go do this thing, or programmatically kicking off that agent to go do a thing. And they also talk a little bit about human in the loop, which is another powerful idea for agentic frameworks. At which point is it critical that a human reviews the output or a human makes the decision? And also, are the agents capable of including a human in the loop at the right time? So when do we use agents? Agents are good for open-ended problems. By the way, everything we've talked about previously have been workflows. Now we're talking about agents. Agents can be used for open-ended problems where it's difficult or impossible to predict the number of steps and where you can't hard code a fixed path. So I want to say thank you to Eric Schluntz.
Okay, let's get,
and Barry Zhang.
I mean, I don't want to mess with the thank you. Sorry.
For open-ended problems where it's difficult or impossible to predict the number of steps and where you can't hard code a fixed path. So I want to say thank you to Eric Schluntz and Barry Zhang who wrote this. This is a great starter article for how to think about agents.
What a great job. Get his thank yous in there. He made an interesting point. He's saying when you don't know necessarily how the in our case, conversational design, business communication powered by AI, in the cases you don't necessarily know how many steps it's going to take, that's when an agent is extremely handy. And we've had the magic power of function calling balling for a long time now. And so when you have, this is what made Kelly and I and Wendy and I so pumped when we first had functions. And first, we're able to trigger things through AI. what was so cool was with these functions here, and he mentioned human in the loop, you have that by default, ladies and gentlemen. Connect user to human, that is human in the loop. There's a lot of AI people out there that don't have this ability at all. And then if they do, it's a pass off that they're blind to, by the way, not to like squirrel and like get off track. But we were so excited, Kelly, Wendy, and I, and all the OGs, when we understood functions were actually going to work for us, because this allowed for a lead qualification journey that did not have to be mapped out in a giant way on the flow builder. Okay, you didn't have to use the get user data element. It's one of my favorite elements in the platform, but you didn't have to use it if you're going to use AI functions. And so instead of it being here's a predefined 3-block flow that we have to go by to collect the 3 pieces of information, you could have everything just asked in one message. Give me your name, email, phone number, boom. The function captures all of that information, categorizes it in your custom fields, all nice and pretty, and then triggers it onto the next one. There's your flow, or here's your predefined message. Thanks, your appointment's made, or whatever. That's why the functions are magic. They're so magical. We made them an icon here, right? Who likes the new dashboard icons that we've got? There's our function. It's magic, baby. The functions, when I saw functions, I was like, game over. Everyone in AI is going to, like, that understands this, can do everything, anything that you want. When you hear people talk about tools, by the way, I show you how fast and easy it is to connect to a tool, and I'll check some comments and we'll be done. We're basically done. Thank y'all for hanging out and bearing with me through such a horrible intro. I mean, I don't typically mess up that bad, but okay. In this case, we would be able to add our Google Sheets here. I don't have a Google Sheet that I want to add necessarily, but let's call this test. Let's make something new. Let's just call this Google Sheets. In this case, when you hear functions and you hear tools, and you're like, man, what's that? You already have this. Here's your Google Sheets action. So here's your Google Sheets action. Google Sheet is a tool. That is a tool. Okay. What if you just wanted to trigger make or something? Trigger make actions. Wouldn't you say make is a tool? Makes or Zapier or Pabbly. These are actually tens of thousands of tools right here. Plus, you've got external API requests, which we went over last video, that can now be done by AI, which makes life easy, right? But in this case, you can trigger make. What makes TBB different than other flow building tools out there is less is more. We can do more with one block than other tools can do with 4 or 5. Okay, so when it becomes too much, think about Ryan saying it's probably a way to consolidate that. Sometimes there's not, but most of the time there's going to be. But in this case, what's happening here is I've got, I can't publish it because I don't have a sheet here because I've not added one. But what would happen here is I would make these flows a tool or a function that I would use. The function is calling the tool. So when I click add here, and I would say Google Sheets, or I'll say, okay, trigger make. Allows the user to provide their contact information. We could say what we want to collect. Say user's full name. Say user's email. User's phone. All right. So we got full name up in there, email, phone, and then we'll trigger make. Trigger make is our function. So when we go to our integrations here, if we're going to create a default agent, which means it's going to override any default flow that we've set here, even though we've set this flow, if we have this turned on, it's overriding. This is the man right here, OpenAI. I'm going to come here. I'm going to be a function caller baller and adding trigger make right here. And then to make things even sweeter, we could say something like, after a user has provided their full name, email, and phone number, trigger the function, and then we can just literally call out the function name, trigger, make, and this would work beautifully. So whatever you needed to send to your CRM, whatever you needed to send to any other software or system, what would happen here is you'd obviously have your custom instructions here for your business that you'd probably make in the business or the build knowledge base. You'd have your custom instructions, and you could define your functions, right? And you could just, this is the perfectly written function for a lead capture. You could say, when the user wants to become a lead, or try to entice the user to become a lead, whatever. But this is your actual instruction that you would use for your function in this case. So they give the thing, full name, email, phone number. Those parameters are met, right, by your definitions. These have been the information has been contained. Now trigger make. Trigger make is a flow. So instead of having to import libraries of code or fiddle with code at all, where you've got one typo and you're kind of screwed, which that's the most annoying, one of the most annoying things. In our case, everything is easy. Everything is natural language. That's the future of all software, is natural language and agentic abilities. So I think that, again, when we know that Anthropic, one of the biggest companies, starts off their December 2024 article, the end of year article about agents, the hottest thing in the market, and what they're talking about are default workflows and default agents. The language is the number one thing right now that just tells me, aside from all the other numbers, we're on the right track, folks. If you're here, you're at the right place. I think that's pretty much all I've got for tonight. Does anybody have any questions before I'm out of here? My prompt chain. And again, that's why we've got the prompt chain. It was literally because I knew this day was coming. And when someone stops and they're like, who's this crazy person pretending to be an AI wearing a Mr. T chain? And they realize this is the prompt chain. This is the O1 chain, the operator chain. We are the operators here. Okay, that's what O1 is, operator. If I'm not mistaken, it's a bunch of prompt chains. Chain of thought. That's our chain of thought prompt chain. How do you like that? Yes, we are all the kings and queens here. I tell you, man, do y'all feel like, wow, I'm ahead of the game? Not me, but like yourself. Like after you're seeing arguably the top YouTuber in AI, one of the top for sure, after seeing what he's dropping and so pumped about from one of the biggest companies, probably number 2, number 3 minimum, Claude, Anthropic, they're dropping a whole article about our dashboard, basically. I'd like some credit every now and then. We might have some Claude employees using CBB. I don't know. But, it's just so big. We're on the right track. You're spending your time wisely. I know I'm like long-winded sometimes, mostly because of Asta's fault. But you're spending your time wisely here. It will pay off. It is paying off for a lot of you, and I'm so pumped. It's only going to continue. It's only going to continue. 10 steps ahead, that is exactly right. And we're going to be 100 steps ahead because of the co-creators and the partners that we have that push us to add this or think about integrating that or make this better or this sucks, fix this. We listen to you the best we can. And that's something that I think that makes us unstoppable. Like when you look at the people that just this YouTube demo here, this live, if this is the board of directors for a chatbot AI company, how could any company stop us, man? I promise you they are too. These other companies, these legacy companies are shaking. They're scared because they're like, man, if these guys are all on the same team and it's not transactional, how can we compete? Because they're way more giant than we are if you look at it at that scale. And that's the way I look at it. I look at us as all partners here trying to dominate the same space. And all of us business owners here that are becoming these AI experts, top 1%, if we're all at the executive board right now together, going over our next moves, There is no company that could stop us, man. I promise you that. And we've made an impact. Next year's going to be even more. But anyways, that's all I've got for now. Kim, this is an amazing company. This is what we are doing. And your videos and your content is going to pay off big in 2025. I put that on everything. I've not led y'all down the wrong path. And I put my face and name out here on that. So thank y'all so much for trusting us and believing in us. We're going all the way to the moon, baby. Thank y'all for hanging out. Peace.